Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. Hopefully you've got drinks. Welcome to the lunch studio. Good to see you all here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a brief presentation where I think it's about 6 of these guys will just show you some examples, like 4 sheets of their portfolio. The point of it is to kind of show you guys some of the things perhaps they thought were good, some of the things they thought perhaps weren't so good. But the most important thing for you all to remember is, we're still students as well, so these aren't the be-all and end-all. There'll be your own ways to kind of do your portfolios. But just to try and kind of give you a steer of where we're heading. So we'll probably, it doesn't really matter which groups you are on the list outside. We'll just kind of do it in one group, 2 groups, and 3 groups, so you've got a big numbers. So to kickstart the presentations, pass over to Matt.
So I use quite a strong visual style throughout my portfolio and try to link to my final year project, which is all about using traditional materials and techniques in a new sort of manner in a post-industrial landscape. So if you go to the next page, well, actually go to the second page. So I just on my front page is my name, what it is, and then because this is what I use to apply to MR classes, where I was graduate from my year art practice. So it's all just give a very brief introduction of myself to the next one. Each project, I'm just going to show you 4 pages, but there was in my large portfolio, I've got my second year final project, third year final project, work in industry, and then generic sort of creative stuff. So there's a section for each one in this same manner. Sort of giving a title, page, and introduction to the next section that you're going to look at. So yeah, this is all about sort of the idea of sort of marking something old on something new. So I think this sort of whole page being marked down to essentially a marked on sort of image, which sort of like related quite well to the tonality of the final year project. So that worked quite well. But because I sort of gave myself this visual style linked to the project, I think that this image works really well. If James goes on to the next slide, that my stuff in practice didn't work quite so well because it didn't have that same sort of aesthetic to it. And so whilst it still works coherent with the portfolio, that actually I'd rather had a more plain white thing with the professional practice stuff. Actually I had a logo in the bottom corner and then all the revision numbers I did, sort of showing how I understood the sort of more conventions of practice work. So I think that gets lost in this image. And like I say, I then left enough room, not only take up a whole page or an image, but left room for me to describe what each image was about. So I think overall the style was quite a long presented work to just give yourself a strong concept based only on one project that hinders you later when you start putting other stuff onto it.
So I think in terms of what's maybe particularly notable maybe about one of Matt's portfolio is he's used these sort of textures throughout. So, wrong way. So Matt, you want to talk a bit?
Yeah,
I think you've kind of got to be a bit careful when you're using this sort of stuff because it's easy to overdo it. So do you think that you've done that successfully with that?
Well, I think
he would.
Yeah. I think I might just keep it down. So actually, it is textural in the way that it looks on the screen, but the actual image isn't overpowering it. So it sort of complements you when there's enough blank space around that. It gives the drawing room to breathe, and then I think the text is quite sharp and neat. So if I use like a more funky text, I think maybe it wouldn't be the case. But like I say, I try to keep, although it's textural, like the palette of colours is all quite simple, which reflects the way I like to work. I don't really like using colour, except to highlight the important bits. So I think that works reasonably well in the portfolio.
And was this A3?
This was A3, yes. With the images on it, and everywhere I applied to 3 universities to do their MR course with this portfolio, and I got accepted at all 3. So must be just around.
So we can see there, as quite kind of bold block colours, whereas keeping text formatted on the same on every page, I think. Yeah, so there's a consistent side to that. He's kept all his images quite, this is something he's done in practice, so there's obviously texture he's added that wouldn't be in the drawing in practice. And so it's all quite consistent and quite bold, I guess. Right, so we'll go on to the next one, so schematic.
Hi everyone. Portfolio examples that I'm showing is what I used to apply for when I did the term abroad as part of the MR course. But I used a kind of a similar layout when I applied for my part 1 jobs, and as I'm about to graduate this year, I'll obviously probably be doing my portfolio. So for that particular portfolio for provisioning tech application, I just kind of put my projects from my 4th year, and I kind of follow this kind of grid system where I have kind of me column on one side with just a brief description of the project, and I always kind of make sure that I use mixed media. So because I'm quite illustrative, as you can see, I have some colors on there, but I have a mixture of hand drawings and then something that uses CAD and Photoshop, and then on the bottom is also 3D SketchUp. And next page, and then anything which I feel I want to kind of show off and which actually really does utilize a lot of skills in the best possible way is I always kind of blow up any images, any more important images to a bigger size. So, for example, the axle at the top can use photo montaging, and I also try and include, I guess, I'm not very sort of keen on model making, but some of my concept models, it still kind of shows the development process. So the way I kind of Photoshop that, where I take photographs of that, I still put some models in there just to show that I am, coming out of the 2D and working in 3D as well. And the next one. And it's okay to kind of put artwork as well. I mean, this is why something that's separate to the projects is at the end of the portfolio I always put kind of fine art or paintings or other kind of drawings as well. This is just another 4th year project that I put in. And obviously when I finish my 5th year project, that will be the first thing that I show, and then I might show some of these 4th year examples as well. And I guess the other thing was I always had this consistent banner at the top, kind of color coding each of the projects that I did. If I were to be self-critical, I think because my style has changed to become a bit more subtle, I think I would turn down the saturation a bit, and I think my next portfolio might kind of go for more subtle colours rather than anything that's too bright. Looking back at this, it's good to kind of look back and then learn from it, and then I can improve it later on.
I think what's cool about this one is we've got the range of media, so we're showing all the skills, and as I've said before in some of the talks we've spoken about before, it's important to show your hand-drawing skills as well, because employers do like to see that, and having the models in there is really cool. And you can also tell there's kind of a completely different tone with this one. It's quite, whereas Matt's is maybe a bit more gloomier, this is kind of a bit brighter and I'm going to say happier. But that's because he's a bit of an angry man.
That was the happiest I could do.
So was this A3 as well?
This was actually A4. It was an A4, so it's just something kind of basic, something I could just do in, and also put it in the post as well.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so up next we have Simon.
What a headshot. It's a picture. So we know who you are. Like, they got down to the point. Like, so that's who's next. No. So, this is the second page into my portfolio. I always thought it was quite good, like, to be able to straight away say what you can do and what you can't do. And just try off, and show off a few images. So I put one of my sort of favourite key images in the background, and straight away say where I've been, what my software skills were, so what I can do. And try to show that in the image as well. I thought that was sort of, they flick through these things quite quickly when they're in the studio, and it's sort of chucking one way or chucking the other way. And I sort of wanted to be very quick to be on the path and go through a little bit more detail. But do let them know exactly what you can do, and maybe suggest you can do a few things that you can't. But so yeah, moving on. So in the portfolio, you'll break it down and put it into your separate modules. At the beginning of each module, I tried to have a cover page where I took my favourite image and sort of blew it up big, and again just tried to show a lot of software skills in one image. So Photoshop, 3ds Max, CAD, all of that goes into that. Plus, do a very short description of what my project was about. I think in the first iterations I did a portfolio, these were very long, it took up a lot of the screen, and actually when you go to meetings and stuff, they don't really read through these, it's very much clicking through your images. So do keep it quite small and condensed, just say what year you're in, and just another thing as well, I put a number next to every sort of image just to let them know what software I had used for each image, so they know how I'm making these things. I went for an interview at Allies and Morrison,
and there was a woman from the graphics department, and she wanted to know exactly how I've made it. It was to see if I've worked on the same workflow that they do. So this is like sort of standard page from inside of one of those projects, and it's a bit I got sort of quite criticised on, and something I would do differently next time. So I just crammed a lot onto one page. Like, there's a nice, well, I felt a nice images here, but basically you're not showing them off to their full advantage. If that's an AP portfolio, it's not big enough for them to really get in and see how much effort you put in. Whereas like you're showing these images at like one big page up on the digital quit space. So next time I was do this again, I would have lots of white space around it and just show one image per page, I think. And that's something I choose is telling us at the moment. And he's also telling us to do this in an A1 format, that all the work we have to produce now is A1. And we're meant to be doing images that hold an A1 page, because that shows you can get enough thought and detail into those images. Next one. I always put my CV in the back of the portfolio, just to try and give them a bit of extra information if they like my portfolio by the time they got to the end. But I also tried to make sure it wasn't just a black and white page with just like text. I think you have to try and show desire all the way through your portfolio. You've got to show you can make everything you do sort of like look good. This might not be to certain people's style, but it's the way I do things, and it just sort of trying to show that attention to detail all the way through the portfolio. You haven't just given up and it's just giving out a bit of text. One sort of tip I would say was I went to a few interviews where I printed the portfolio just the day before, and I found that my screen at home is quite bright compared to the sort of grey colours printed on the paper. Try and make sure you print your portfolio days in advance, like do some test prints. Because I went along to a few interviews and I like these images are too dark. Like this needs to be a lot brighter, and you couldn't see the full detail in the images because of that, and they let them down in a few situations. So do make sure you put a lot of time and effort into producing a really nice document that you can take along. That shows quality.
So that's really good. So take Simon's advice and you'll avoid the criticism you receive, perhaps. Right, next we have Grace.
Okay, cool. So this was the second page of my final third year project, Urban, and what I tried to do for each project was, rather than having a layout that was consistent the whole way through, so that each page was the same, I had each project was the same. So I had like the first page, a large image, kind of my most important image probably was a description. Again, like Simon said, probably a bit too much text. They're not really going to spend much time reading that. And then, if you just and then a series of images, perspectives mostly following that. Critique again for this would be same as we've had so far, too many images on the page. Kind of repeating what Simon said, some of these images would just be A1 images in a crit, so when you reduce it down, it just kind of, it's not as effective. Then this page, I would say, I would probably take out those plans because they don't really show much. They don't show like a great quality. They're just kind of, they show a skill. The reason why I put these in particular was because the practice I was applying to at the time kind of wanted to see Revit generated images, and this page was that. So yeah, I guess that satisfied them, but then at the same time, it's not the most important and best thing you can show. So,
I think that's interesting because you're saying that you're tailoring your portfolio kind of to people that you're applying to. But perhaps you're not happy with the images you have here. So I guess there's maybe a when you're doing that and you're putting in the images that you're happy with.
And then again, way too much on one page. I kind of wanted to show some detailing, but just, you know, spread it out. There's not really a limit, and they'll probably more happily go through a portfolio if you have one image per page, rather than, you know, if they see this, they'll probably be like, what? Having said that, yeah.
It's good to get this stuff in there. Like,
Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to say. What I didn't do is I didn't put in any photos of models or sketch development or anything like that. And I know that quite a lot of practices like to see your development, not just your final image. Even though they do want to see what programs you use, they do also like to see how you work throughout. So when I would do this again, I'd probably put in a couple of images of models or sketches or something like that.
Thank you. Right, up next. We
Reason
have
one.
Matt.
Hello. So this is a page from my third year portfolio for moderation. When I was really keen to try and put as much on a page as possible, something which I find quite disgusting at the moment. I've also tried to do too many things on one page. I'm probably going to contradict some of the others, but I've tried to show that I can take a picture, I can make a model, and I can do a 3D model here. Yeah, really, I've got other pages showing this skill, and I had less pages showing my models, and some of the interviews I had, they were saying like, it would be nicer to see that they can see that you can 3D model, they can see that you take photos. What they want to see is the things that you barely show, like your sketches and your models. So maybe in future I would have less visuals and maybe more process drawings or like concept models. This is the front cover of the one I applied for MArch courses with. Just basically, like, it's kind of, front covers are hit and miss. Some people love them, some people hate them, some people hate images on them, some people hate images not on them. So I tried to give like a little snippet of what was within it, showing a variety of skills, but keeping like a pretty consistent method of like graphics, so black and white, inverting certain colours and keeping like a title really simple, just clearly with your name and nothing. Don't try and pick yourself up too much because you're a fish at the start. And so this is kind of like a revised portfolio sheet comparatively to my first one, where I'm just emphasising one image, which is conceptual, and then kind of trying to add to that with some smaller concept image, development images. But just trying to actually reiterate that blank space is pretty good. You don't have to cram it. It's nice to try and hold, like Simon said, if you can get one image on the page, that image is strong. If you're trying to fill it with loads of other stuff, you're pulling away from that image and you don't believe in it. And I've tried to keep to like 1 or 2 font types. It's really simple, but people will pick you up on it and it just looks really embarrassing if you've got 3 or 4 or 5 different font types, or if you've done all caps and then lowercase and all caps. Just try and pick 1 or 2, preferably 1. But yeah, that's consistent. And then just to basically show you that you can just full believe an image if you're really proud of it and you feel like it's going to carry you. It doesn't have to be a literal image, it can be conceptual. Don't panic about that. If you believe in the image, back yourself with it and full out believe it. But just basically, I've tried to show you like a group of images of like a variety of work. You basically want to sell yourself and show that you can do all the tasks and you're proud of everything you've done and you're showing a process. So you've got concept sketches, you've got some models, you've got a 3D visual, and then you've also got some Photoshop stuff. You just try and make yourself as profitable as possible, really. I think that's what I was going to do.
Thank you. And then, last but not least, we've got Noah.
Yeah, I think I missed the memo because this is my portfolio for this year, not one that I applied for a job with. So I've been doing this as I go along this year. So these are all A1.
So basically, I've just kept it really simple. It's all white paper, same grid, 2 fonts, one for title, one for text. Nice small font in the corner. Go to the next one. Titles are always in the same place. It's the same, based on the same grid, the layout. Again, lots of white space. Next one. Same again. Yeah, I've kept, this is my work here as well, because I haven't taken it down yet. But I've kept the same colour throughout my whole portfolio, so I've kind of used that one colour through all of the drawings. So it's mostly black and white and one colour. And then the final sheet. Something our tutor always tells us is you're never actually going to build your project that you're designing. So your portfolio is kind of your architecture. So if you make a model, document that process of making the model. So this is how I made that model, just to show that your portfolio is kind of your design. That's your thing that you're making. You're not building a building, you're building a portfolio. So you kind of need to show everything you've done and give everything care. You just need to think as you're doing it. You just keep a record of what you're doing. The sheet before this in my actual portfolio is all the laser cut patterns of how that was cut out as well to scale, so you can kind of see where it comes from. Yeah, that's all there is to it.
Okay, so that's all presentations. So kind of really trying to kind of really sum up, I think you can probably tell that you've seen a wide variety of different styles. You've heard some of the things that these guys think they did successfully, some of the things that they think weren't so successful. And it's kind of, I think the key things are really, keep your portfolios clear and easy to read, maybe one image per page, or keep it very concise in a way. Show your process, so you're sketching your concept development, and obviously print it early, amongst other great tips that have been discussed today. So I think now what we'll do is we'll split up into the 3 groups. We'll have a group at the table